It was the middle of winter in Denali National Park, Alaska. Snow was falling in heavy sheets, swallowing the horizon, muffling every sound but the wind. That morning, Ranger Eli Matthews was checking a remote trail, a trail almost no one used this time of year. And then he saw it, half buried in ice. Protruding from a jagged snowbank was a torn backpack strap. He dug with his gloved hands, the cold biting his fingers until he hit something solid. What he uncovered would not only rewrite the story of two missing hikers, but reveal a truth darker than anyone could have imagined. A young couple gone for 9 months, and this was the first real trace anyone had found. But to understand what Eli had just unearthed, you need to know who they were, why they came to Alaska, and how a simple hike turned into one of the most haunting mysteries in the state's history. Emma Parker and Noah Reynolds were the kind of couple people noticed, not because they were loud or flashy, but because they seemed inseparable. Emma was 27, a freelance wildlife photographer with a habit of vanishing into forests for hours just to get the perfect shot. She had dark, shoulder-length hair that she always tucked under a knitted beanie, and she carried an old film camera everywhere, even though Noah used to tease her. You know, you could just use your phone, right? But Emma liked the imperfections of film. She said it made every photo feel alive. Noah, 29, was quieter. A software engineer who worked remotely, he wasn't the outdoorsy type until he met Emma. But he followed her into the wilderness anyway, learning to pitch tents in the rain, build fires from damp wood, and most importantly, keep up with her restless curiosity. To their friends, they were that couple, the ones who made disappearing into the wild look romantic. But Alaska was different. For Emma, Alaska wasn't just a destination. It was a dream. She'd been obsessed with the wild expanse since she was a kid, staring at National Geographic spreads of frozen peaks and endless tundra. When she finally convinced Noah to book a trip, she called it the adventure that would change everything. 9 days, 1 rental SUV, 2 backpacks crammed with gear. They landed in Anchorage in early May, when the snow was still retreating from the lower trails, and the air had that sharp, metallic chill. Their plan was simple: explore a series of hiking trails near Denali, camp for a few nights, and document everything. But somewhere along the way, the trail led them farther than they or anyone expected. The night before they vanished, Emma and Noah stopped in a tiny roadside diner called the Silver Moose. The waitress, Carla, still remembers them. They were sweet, she'd later tell reporters. She kept taking pictures of the pie. He kept laughing at her for it. They didn't look scared. They didn't look like two people about to. You know, they stayed until the diner was closing, paid in cash. And then, according to CCTV from the gas station next door, they drove north. That was the last confirmed sighting of Emma Parker and Noah Reynolds. The next morning, they parked their SUV near the Denali trailhead. Emma texted her sister, "Signal's bad. Don't freak out if we drop offline. Back in a few days." It was the last message she would ever send. Noah's phone pinged one last tower at 10:42 a.m. After that, silence. When they didn't come back, friends assumed they'd simply extended their hike. It wasn't unusual for Emma to lose track of time in the wilderness. But by day 4, when they still hadn't returned, Emma's sister called Alaska State Troopers. The search began, and it was like the forest had swallowed them whole. 2 days into the search, rescuers found something: a campsite. The tent was zipped, the sleeping bags were laid out neatly. Emma's camera was inside, loaded with film. But there was no sign of Emma or Noah. And then there was the strangest detail of all. Their boots were missing. Not just gone from the tent, gone from the entire site. No footprints in the surrounding snow. No drag marks. Nothing. It was as if the couple had walked out barefoot and simply vanished. And this was only the beginning. The morning after the call came in, Alaska State Troopers, volunteer rangers, and a K-9 team fanned out from the Denali trailhead. The SUV was there, exactly where Emma and Noah had left it. Inside, 2 empty coffee cups, a folded map with a red line drawn across the Savage River Loop Trail, and Noah's favorite hoodie draped over the passenger seat. The doors were locked. It was like they planned to come back, Ranger Eli Matthews would later say. People who run don't lock their cars. Search teams followed the trail for miles, shouting their names until their voices cracked. The dogs picked up a faint scent near the couple's campsite. Then nothing. Not even the K9s could follow their trail beyond that point. The boots haunted investigators. In the tent, 2 pairs of socks, neatly folded. Outside the tent, nothing. Why would anyone leave their boots? Trooper Mason Heller asked during the first press briefing. You don't hike Alaska barefoot. You don't even walk 50 feet barefoot. The ground'll cut you up in minutes. Theories swirled. Some thought the couple was attacked by an animal, but there were no signs of struggle. Others believed they'd gotten lost and panicked. But that didn't explain why everything in the tent, food, sleeping bags, camera, was untouched. It was as if they'd simply stood up, stepped outside, and evaporated. On the 3rd day, Emma's camera was processed. The photos were eerie. The first roll showed what you'd expect. Sweeping mountain views, a fox darting across snow, Noah grinning while holding a clumsy campfire. But the last 2 frames, frame 23, a blurred figure, deep in the background, barely visible through the trees. Frame 24, pure black. Technicians argued it was just a shadow, a trick of the light. But Emma's sister swore Emma never took accidental shots. If there's a photo, it's because she saw something, she said. By day 5, the search had grown massive. 40 ground searchers, 2 helicopters, drone support, K9 teams. They combed every inch of the Savage River Basin. No tracks, no torn clothing, no blood. But then, a volunteer found something strange. Half a mile from the campsite, wedged in the crook of a tree branch, was a single mitten. It was Emma's. There were no footprints leading to it. No sign of a climb. It was just there. The locals had their own theories. An old trapper named Frank told the troopers, "People don't just go missing here. The woods, they keep things. You think you know where you are, then the fog rolls in, and the ground ain't where it was before." Most dismissed him as superstitious. But then Frank said something that chilled even the most hardened ranger. 9 years back, same trail. A hunter vanished. When they found his gear, it was all zipped up neat in his tent. Boots gone. Just like these 2. After 14 days, with no sign of Emma or Noah, the official search was scaled back. For their families, this was unthinkable. Emma's sister, Claire, stayed in Alaska, pleading with troopers not to quit. Noah's father hired private trackers, but even they came back empty-handed. The case went cold, until 9 months later, when a single discovery changed everything. 9 months. 9 months of silence. The mountains had taken Emma and Noah, and the world had moved on. At least most of it. For Claire, Emma's sister, every sunrise felt like an insult. She stayed in Alaska, renting a small cabin near Healy, convinced that if she left, Emma would be gone forever. She visited the trailhead weekly, leaving flowers by the locked SUV until the snow made the road impassable. "She's not gone," Claire told reporters. "People don't just disappear. Not like this." But as winter swallowed the land, even the most devoted volunteers stopped showing up. In February, a call came in. A bush pilot named Gary Thompson reported seeing bright orange deep in the backcountry, nearly 12 miles from the original search grid. "Could be a jacket," he told troopers, "or could be trash." But it didn't look like trash. A new search was launched, but the terrain was brutal. Steep ravines, thick ice, no clear landing zones. After 4 days, they found it, piece of fabric. But it wasn't orange. It was a faded tent scrap, years old, from a different missing hiker entirely. Another dead end. In March, Claire met a man in a small Healy bar who claimed he'd seen Emma and Noah. "They came through here," he insisted, voice slurred from whiskey. "Couple months before they went missing. Said they were headed where the trees don't grow right." When troopers followed up, he denied ever saying it. Locals wrote it off as drunken rambling. But Claire didn't. Trees don't grow right. The phrase stuck with her, gnawing at the edges of her sanity. Desperate, Noah's father hired a man named Jack Riker, a retired ranger turned private tracker. Riker was quiet, methodical, and had a reputation for finding what others missed. He spent 2 weeks alone in the backcountry. When he came back, he was pale. "They weren't lost," he said. "They walked off that trail on purpose." When pressed for evidence, he only said, "Boots don't vanish unless someone takes them off." It made no sense. And then Riker stopped returning calls. In May, hikers reported finding bones half buried in the snow. For one gut-twisting hour, everyone believed it was Emma or Noah. But lab results came back. Moose, another dead end. By June, the families were hollowed out. The case file gathered dust. Search maps yellowed on the station walls. Even Claire, the last believer, stopped going to the trailhead. "I used to hear her voice," she told a reporter. "Now I just hear wind." The world had given up, until a ranger named Eli Matthews refused to. It was a hot July morning, rare for Alaska, when Matthews returned to the trail for what he called one last look. 5 miles off the main path, through a thicket no hiker would ever choose to cross, he found it, a single hiking boot, wedged in the crook of a tree, just like Emma's mitten. But this time, there were scratches on the bark, as if something or someone had been dragged upward. And inside the boot, a strip of fabric, bright orange. In the end, Emma and Noah were found. But the mountains, they kept their secrets. Some say it was the snow. Some say it was fear. And yet, when the rangers talk about that hollow, their voices drop. They don't speak of what the evidence showed, only of what they felt. Because sometimes the wilderness doesn't just take. Sometimes it watches. And if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of those ridges, looking down into that valley where Emma and Noah made their last stand, you might feel it too. That cold breath on the back of your neck. The quiet that isn't quite quiet. And the unshakable feeling that you're not alone. This was their story. But maybe it won't be the last. But what do you think? Was this just a tragic accident in Alaska's unforgiving wilderness? Or is there something out there in those mountains we're not meant to understand? Let me know what you believe in the comments below.